I'd like to welcome you all to Book Passage and thank you so much for spending this gorgeous Saturday afternoon with us. We so appreciate it. Independent bookstores like this are really a special thing, and we really appreciate your support. This afternoon's guest, novelist Anita Hughes, is the acclaimed author of Lake Como, Monarch Beach, and Market Street. Today, we are celebrating the release of her latest literary offering, French Coast. Let me just tell you, you do not need a passport to go to the French Riviera. You don't. All you need is this book. It is amazing. It's a lavish novel written with an exquisite attention to detail that brings its mesmerizing story to really vibrant life. New York Times bestselling author Patty Callahan Henry writes, "French Coast is a kind of novel I sink into, a story soaked with glamour, family loyalty tested, and love's resiliency proven." Anita Hughes combines a lush setting, family mystery, love, and longing in one enchanting story of three beautiful women who are tested and endure. So please join me in a warm, warm welcome for Anita Hughes.
After that, I should just leave. So it doesn't get better than that. Thank you so much. And this is my third, you guys can hear me, right? This is my third appearance at Book Passage, and I'm so grateful. I was just saying to my daughter-in-law, who hadn't been here, that I remember when my oldest son used to come and destroy the children's section. So it's been here so long, and it's such an incredible store, and it's such an incredible resource to the whole community, and they do the most amazing job. I have a lot of Facebook friends who are authors, and they always post pictures of the stationery that you give the authors afterwards. So it's just really a wonderful store in every way. And I wanted to just tell you a little bit. I'm going to read just a little bit of French Coast, and it is my fourth book, and my first was Monarch Beach, that came out in 2012, set right here in Ross, in Marin. It's your first book that you go, oh, this will never be published, so I'm going to set it wherever I want. And I used the F word about 50 times because it was kind of an angry book, and I thought nobody was ever going to read it. Since then, I've calmed down a lot. And that was set here in Ross and in Monarch Beach. And then Market Street was set all in San Francisco, and Lake Como was set in San Francisco and Lake Como. And then French Coast is set in San Francisco and the French Riviera. And then I have another book coming out in August called Roman Love, which is about Audrey Hepburn. So people are excited about that. And I just turned in another book for next spring set in Mallorca. So, since I almost never leave the house, I get to at least travel through the books. So I'm just going to read a tiny little bit and then maybe tell you guys a little bit about publishing, because I think people are always interested how books actually get out and how authors do what they do. One of the really fun things about writing French Coast is everyone can see right here, is I had three storylines, and one of them is a flashback, and it's about it. The story is that a young West Coast editor of Vogue, Serena, goes to the French Riviera to interview the former editor-in-chief of French Vogue, and she's this older, mysterious woman, and in flashback she tells her story, and it's kind of very steamy and sexy, and she had this obsessive love affair. So I'm just going to read a little bit of her story. Because I like writing the sexy parts. I met Bertrand at this very hotel, Yvette began. I was younger than you. It was my first assignment. Bertrand was France's literary lion. He had already won the Prix Grand Court, Serena said, consulting her notes. It must have been so intimidating to be in his presence. What was he like? He was 30 and gorgeous, Yvette sighed. Sharp, dark eyes, a firm chin, like a young Marlon Brando. Her eyes misted over as if she were drifting back in time. You look very young to be senior editor at Vogue, Bertrand said. He wore a white singlet and khakis and a silver chain around his neck. He smoked one cigarette after another, grinding them into a glass ashtray. I'm Irene's secretary, Yvette admitted. She got food poisoning at lunch. Have you ever interviewed an author before? Bertrand asked, smiling mischievously. We can be very demanding. For instance, we can't start until you join me in a glass of Chardonnay. I don't drink wine in the afternoon, Yvette replied. She was so nervous, she kept twisting her pen. Of course you do. You're a journalist. Bertrand poured 2 glasses of white wine. Now tell me, what are your goals? Do you plan on running Vogue? Are you going to write the great French novel? I'm engaged, Yvette murmured. My fiancé's family owns a bank in Paris. So you're going to make babies and get fat? Bertrand looked at her closely. That will be a waste of a great beauty. I want to be a mother, Yvette replied indignantly. I love children. Bertrand paced around the room, his hands in his pockets. You're right. Having children is the only way to gain immortality. We writers try, but it is only our words that will live on. We will become dust in a graveyard. How old are you? 21? 22? You're too young to devote your life to children. The next part's a little racy, so I'm going to skip that. You guys have to read that part yourself. I won't blush. I'm here to interview you, Yvette replied, breaking away from his touch. Ah, the newspapers and magazines, they make up what they want to hear, Bertrand shrugged. That I have a mistress in every town, that I was beaten as a child. They don't want to know the real Bertrand Roland. I'd much rather learn about you. Yvette heard a knock at the door. Bertrand's publicist poked her head in and tapped her fingers on her watch. I have to, Yvette, interview you, Yvette said, frowning, or I'll be fired. Bertrand waited till his publicist left, then walked over to the table. He picked up a Polaroid camera and handed it to Yvette. We'll give them what they want. He stubbed out his cigarette and stripped off his singlet. He unzipped his slacks and folded them on the chair. He looked at Yvette, grinning like a schoolboy. Then he took off his underwear and his socks. Take a picture. You'll sell more copies in the history of Vogue. I can't do that, Yvette stammered, closing her eyes. This morning you were a secretary. Now you're a journalist, he replied. Take the photo. Please come have a seat. Come join us. We got over the racy part, so it's safe for children. Have a seat. So now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I've learned in my publishing journey, or what I've experienced in my publishing journey. As I said, my first book came out in 2012. So I know a lot of authors, when they come here, they want to tell you what they have learned in publishing. Well, I want to tell you what I haven't learned. So the first thing that I haven't learned is I haven't learned what to do with the huge amounts of money that they deposit in my bank account, because there hasn't been any. And people always go, people that don't know authors, they go, oh my gosh, did you go? Are you going to the south of France, and are you going to New York? And I'm like, I get to go to the grocery store and buy the good cookies instead of the generic cookies. Being an author and the whole field is very, very, very low paying, except for John Grisham and a few others. So whenever you see an author, you know that they're not doing it for the money. The second thing I haven't learned is how to recover from the terrible New York Times reviews and bad reviews on Oprah, because I haven't gotten any reviews from New York Times or Oprah. And again, when you're sitting with authors, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get reviewed by the New York Times or People. And I'd say 80% of the books in this store don't. And if we're very lucky, you always Google yourself, and I think today I saw that in the, well, you guys, in the, I live in Dana Point, in the Dana Point free newspaper, the one that you get, outside the grocery store that doesn't cost money. There was a line about my book signing there. So you're very lucky with anything that you get, and the New York Times book review is not going to happen, probably. The third thing that I haven't learned is how to walk on the red carpet when the book is made into a movie, and I've got Blake Lively standing on one side and whoever we choose to play Chase on the other, because nobody has made it into a movie. And I was laughing last night that you do see people get optioned, but then it just sits there. And I was laughing because Reese Witherspoon seems to buy all these great books, and you have all these authors going on Facebook going, yay, Reese Witherspoon is going to play me, and she's going to, and then you never hear anything about it again. So while I would love it if she bought it and then, use it as a pillow, that's probably not going to happen either. So, getting optioned, having it made into a movie is sort of like, saying you're going to write a novel and you have a keyboard. I mean, your chances are about the same. So, if all those things aren't happening, what have I learned from being an author for the last 4 years? One thing I've learned, which is interesting, especially around here in the Bay Area and day-to-day life, where everything moves so quickly, where you guys can text this to Moscow in 30 seconds or 1 second, is patience. Because publishing moves like, and Sari here is another wonderful author with a gorgeous book out, moves so slowly that we all have to just rein ourselves in. And even though I love my editor and I love publishing, like, we all have these tricks. Like, you won't have heard from your editor in months, so you'll send her an email about the weather or about her kid's birthday just to see if you get a reply. Make sure they're all still there. Yeah. So you really, really have to learn to be patient, and I think that is actually a good thing in life. And then the other thing you have to learn is to give up control, because again, in a regular job, at the end of the day that you made this sale or you accomplished this, your boss says, and you just, 6 months after they have the book, I get an email that says, here's your cover, we love it, hope you do too. And that's pretty much all the input you get on the cover. Luckily, I love my covers. You just don't even know where your book will end up. I do have a friend who got reviewed by People, and she knew it was going to be reviewed by People when she picked up the People. And you just kind of think that you would have some sort of advanced knowledge, but you don't. But the third thing that I have learned, and I think that is a really good thing to take to life, is gratitude, to be able to do what I love. Of course, to actually pay the bills and do it, you also need to sell Girl Scout cookies or have kids that are, going to schools that teach you to be computer programmers or whatever. Because the other night, authors are very introverted and they just like to sit in their room and write, and you kind of start thinking the whole outside world is too big. So right before the book came out on Tuesday, and I had all these events, and I was like, I'm canceling everything, I can't leave the house, I'm gonna be in a panic, even though I love it when I actually do it. And it made me realize that I actually write because I love to write. I love being with my characters. Actually, when I was sitting at the airport, I keep my books on my phone, and I started reading my own book because I loved being with my characters. And so writing, you really do have to love to write, and that has to be the main goal, because everything else will kind of make you start spinning. And it's just really wonderful to, I've been a reader all my life, and just ever since I was very young, I still read about 2 books a week, love talking about books. And so to have it written, to have, some people read it and hear what they think, is really a gift. So that's what I've learned mainly, is that I just love to write. Want to just keep writing. So thank you so much for having me here. And if you guys have questions, I'm any questions?
Whereabouts in Ross did you live?
Yeah, I was gonna ask her.
Shady Lane.
Yeah,
Shady
that's
Lane.
right. We were told that. We live in Ross, but how did you choose Ross as an opening for your book?
Well, you know, because I never thought anybody was going to read it. So
Oh.
you start with what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, you know, especially important for a young writer, and obviously I wasn't young when I started, but for a new writer is write what you know so that you can just really envision it. And it is funny because that book has done pretty well, and I think, you know, people are like, where's Ross? Yes.
So how autobiographical was your first book?
Well, you know, I say that book because it's set in Ross and then at the St. Regis in Monarch Beach, which is actually where we live. We live in a villa at the St. Regis, and how we ended up there was that great big storm, 2006, that New Year's Eve storm, that, well, it washed away our house and most of Shady Lane. So we ended up moving down there, and the way it's autobiographical is, you know, if you live somewhere as beautiful as a resort, and everyone's nice to you all the time, like they used to open our car door and say, you know, have a nice day, Mrs. Hughes. I thought, if you are really sad about something and you go somewhere really wonderful, do you take your grief with you? Or when you look up and you see these gorgeous designs on the ceiling and you see the ocean, does it make you feel better? So that's where that came from. And I think it does, actually.
It was very descriptive and gave a good visual.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we should all have somebody who opens our car door in the morning and say, have a good day. Yes.
So is your editor like a partner with you in writing it, or does your editor leave you alone?
The editor, so you know, the editor's in New York, and what I do now is I turn in a synopsis, and which is like a 10-page synopsis, and maybe 20 pages, and then they decide to buy it if they like that, and then I write the whole thing, and then they send you a revision letter, and knockwood, so far mine have been only 3 or 4 days of revisions. Some authors I've heard get, you know, a month or 2 months or 6 months of revisions. So it kind of depends on the editor, and I guess it kind of depends on the book. We'll see, because I just turned in my 6th book yesterday, so we'll see if that continues. Yes.
And so when you first get started, did you send it off to many editors?
Many agents.
Many agents.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, they don't want, and I tell a funny story because, you know, coming from the real world, right? And I ran, I don't know if you guys know, but my husband has a video business, Thomas Hughes Films, that's been in the Bay Area for 30 years. And I did the sales, so that was like a real business, right? And so when you want something, you go after it. So when I, you know, wrote this and I wanted to get published, and the agents just took so long, I go to the back, and don't try this at home, but I go to the acknowledgments and look up the editor's name and figure out, you know, randomhouse.com or penguin.com. And I did query editors directly, but they don't, and they actually did respond. But you're not really supposed to do that. So you query agents, and I did. I queried, gosh, 100 or 200, and then they respond, and then, you know, hopefully you get an agent, and then the agent sells it to the publisher.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know anybody. I was, you know, hadn't written anything, and so didn't know anybody.
Was your agent local or in New York?
New York.
In New York.
Yeah. New York agent and New York publisher. So, and I haven't met them because I never go anywhere, but I did send them pies. We have a son that lives in New York, and he took up pies when it came out, so I have pictures of them. Yes.
So if you write from your experience, but you've never been to the French Riviera, did you do a bunch of research about what
Well,
it was
I've
like
been
there?
to France.
Okay.
And my mother was a huge fan of, especially this is set at the Carlton Intercontinental in Cannes, and she was a huge fan. She used to tell me stories about it from when I was young. And then the movie How to Catch a Thief with Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. One of the characters actually stays in the Cary Grant suite there, and the other one in the Sophie Loren suite. Those are real suites. So I take it like from experience, and then I sit on a computer a lot and just stare. If anybody goes to the Carlton's website, it's just really beautiful. So I do a lot of sitting on the computer and, menus, restaurants, that kind of thing. Yes.
Do you start with character and a situation or a place?
Well, now I start with a place because, I guess my publishing house really likes these different locations. And so I start with a place, and it has to be a place I really want to spend, the next 3 months writing. And so the one that comes out in August is set in Rome, which was really fun. And then the one that comes out next spring is set in Mallorca, which was kind of new. But I have been in, it's called the Costa del Sol, that part of Spain. But yeah, place and then the characters.
Who is your favorite author?
That's a really good question. My favorite, and like I said, I'm kind of an obsessive reader. I've read everything. But actually my favorite dead author, and if you guys haven't read him, I didn't read him till maybe 5 years ago, is Somerset Maugham.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't read him in college, but you can learn everything you need to read from reading Somerset Maugham. He's just brilliant. And then my favorite living author, not that well known in America, is Penny Vincenzi. She's a British author, and she writes these great big thick books, and they're just, you could just read them all day long. And that said, every time I finish a great book, it's like, that's my favorite author. But, yes.
What's your process for writing a book?
So I have kind of a funny process. As not as bad as Dan Brown, who I've heard hangs from his feet. That's actually true.
While he's writing?
When he writes, he hangs from his feet.
What are they called? Inversion?
Or are they one of those inversion boards?
No, I think he just does yoga from his feet, or he hangs there and gets the ideas.
And then he
Right,
turns
yeah.
around and
But what my process is actually very interesting and very hard on my family. I make everybody go to bed at 9 o'clock. And then I have to have complete darkness, though usually in my closet, which is really small. And I just sit there for about an hour and a half in the
Much like
dark.
that of a troll.
Thank you. That's my son, one of the ones who has to go to bed at 9 o'clock. And I sit there in the dark and I think up everything that I'm going to write the next day, and really dialogue, and I do it more than, over and over and over, so that the next morning, as long as nobody disturbs me and, he can make his own breakfast and stuff, then I can just sit down and just put it right on the page. And I try to write 1,000 words a day, and 1,000 perfect words a day, because once I'm done, I actually don't go back and revise. I don't do a second draft. It's just the way that I write. But I do that whole day, I just go over and over it. And one trick that I've found for any other authors out there is very interesting. I email it to myself on my phone, read it on my phone with my computer here. And that way you can just check as a reader instead of a writer and see how it looks, see if it all works. And then if it's okay on my phone, then I'm done with that section. Yes?
How long does it take you to write a book?
I am very fast, which, we're talking about being patient, then I start going crazy. Less than 3 months. And, publishing doesn't work that fast. And so I honestly, with this book that I just finished, I finished it 3 weeks ago, but I didn't get my finished contract, because this is how self-publishing is, until yesterday. So I couldn't turn the book in until until yesterday. So I write fast, and that's not always a good thing, but it's just the way. Yes.
I just wanted, this isn't really a question, I just wanted to say something to any of you who think that that's normal. In any way, shape, or form. Because, as she said, I'm a writer. My first book came out the same time Anita's did, and my second book's coming out in January of next year. I mean, we were in an online group, and all of us are in awe of how her work ethic and how, not just that that you show up, we all try to show up, but that you are able to write something and not have to revise it.
Thanks.
That's a
Thanks.
real
Yeah.
amazing gift that you have.
Thanks. I think I just enjoy
I don't want anyone to
it.
run home thinking they're going to have a novel in 3 months, so
Thank you.
my hat's off to you.
I enjoy it. I enjoy being with them. But it's not always a great thing, because you've got to find other things to keep yourself occupied. I start spitting out synopses that nobody will ever see. I've actually have 6 published and have 6 more written in the Times, where I'm waiting for them to decide what to write.
You need a pen name, like have another or something so you can.
We'll see. But you would never know, so.
So do you keep a journal of your daily life for ideas?
No.
Oh.
No, I know it's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, my daughter does, and I love to read that. Just kidding, she's here somewhere. I'm kidding. So I did when I was young. I definitely did when I was like in college and when I was young.
Which college did you go to?
I went to Bard, which is on the East Coast. No, that's Barnard.
Oh.
Bard, Steely Dan went there. That's their big fan. And Chevy Chase. And then I did a master's at Berkeley
In Berkeley?
in English and creative writing. But no, I don't keep a journal. Busy being the mother. Right. Yeah.
So how do you get inspired to develop the character? Do you see people that maybe have certain traits that you?
Yeah. I think that when I sat down to write the one that comes out in August, it's kind of about Audrey Hepburn, and I watched Roman Holiday, and that's kind of what it's about. And I was like, ooh, I just want to be around her. And then this one, it's kind of funny, but we were kind of like watching Gossip Girl all the time because we have a 20-year-old daughter. So there was just a few characters from there that I just kind of thought were interesting. So you kind of put them together, from different people.
Thank you.
Do you ever take pitches from people who have good characters and stories for you?
Do I ever wait?
Take pitches.
Oh
people
gosh,
like-
yes.
Okay.
Yes, pretty much everybody. Yes. Actually, I have a friend online who just, she's actually a great reviewer, and she sent me a whole storyline. So I want you to do this, Palm Springs, people, you definitely get different ideas.
Would you ever collaborate, or you always like them to be your own character?
Yeah, I don't collaborate because it would just get too confusing. It kind of has to be from your heart, really. It has to be your people. But I'm always open to other people's ideas. Yes.
Okay. Having studied writing, do you think actually going to a writing program helped you as a writer?
Well, see, that's a really good question, and of course it's like there was, I think, an article in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the whole MFA program thing. And I laugh and say, and I know Sari will agree with me, that I don't write any different from when I was 8. And when I was 8, I won a nationwide writing contest in Australia, which is where I grew up. And when I was 13 or 14, I wrote a novel, and with my mother's help, we sent it off to Harper and Row, and actually got a revision letter. But I became a cheerleader, so that's a problem. I think that it's helpful in terms of, what's the Macklemore song, 10,000 hours, that just perfecting it, and also being really hard on yourself. Because I think that even, if you have any kind of talent or something, you have to know how to tell a story, you have to know you know, when to stop. But I think that one of the most important things is voice, and I don't think that can be learned, but that's just my opinion. But I think, you know, anytime you can go to school, it can't be better than going to school, right? Any other questions?
Do you think everybody's got a book in them?
No. Sorry. No, I'm laughing. Only because, you know, coming onto this side now, you just would be amazed that everybody has a book in them. And if it's not in them, it's in the car, and it's, you know, in the glove box, and it's on their kids. And no, I mean, I just don't think we do. And I just, like, we don't all have art in them, or song, or and frankly, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, because it's just not, it's not that easy, it's not that rewarding. I mean, my husband will, or my kids will tell you that I got this horrible 1-star Amazon review on the way up here this morning, and she didn't even finish the book. She read like 33%, and so, you know, there's a lot of not. So I think you have to really want to write. You know, you don't want to force yourself to do it.
When you were 13, what was the subject matter of your book?
That was actually a really good book. And I'll tell you guys it, because someday I think I should write it. So don't steal it. Because I really think it was great. It was called The Great Book of Suchness, and it was about a young prince named Jason, because that's how old I am. Everybody's name was Jason. And he, to save the kingdom, he had to go out and find the meaning of life. And so he went to all these little different places, and first he visited the rabbits, and they were all just making new rabbits, and I can't believe my mother let me write this. And
I like the steamy parts even there.
right. And he thought that was it, but then, you know, obviously it wasn't. And then there was the warriors, but that wasn't it, because they couldn't make any more rabbits. And so eventually he discovered that the meaning of life is such as life. That's all we get. So unfortunately I don't have the manuscript, because I guess it's in Australia or something. But I think I should write it, right? That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do that under a fake name or something.
What was the title again?
So, The Great Book of Suchness. I know, great title.
Yeah.
I gotta write that one. So, one day. So if there's no more questions, there's wine and cheese and crackers, and since this is our last event in the Bay Area, please eat all of them. And I'm happy to sign books if there's lots of books for sale.